This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry, Cathy, that was delayed.
That's okay, it's all good. Now is the time for operators and businesses to really think about that one-on-one communication with customers and understanding with empathy and with collaboration about how we can sort of work through this scenario together. There was a Edelman study that was just released in the last couple of weeks. I think me and probably all of us in marketing are voracious readers of research and any kind of intelligence that we might apply to marketing decisions today and moving forward. And a lot of it is very, common sense, but it's nice to actually have data to support making those decisions. So it's really important now. How we respond in a crisis really can make or break a relationship, and that's not just business relationships. That's also, employer-employee relationships, family relationships, romantic relationships, whatever the case may be. Old expressions like it's when the chips are down, and so the brand component of this is really quite true now, and it's those brands and businesses that treat their customers and reach out to their customers in a certain way that will make or break relationships moving forward. In some ways, I think the day we stopped, whatever day that was for you, was it March 13th or March 9th or March 17th or whatever the case may be, we definitely saw people turtle. It's like, okay, there was a sort of an immediate reaction to kind of hunker in. The reality is we have to do the opposite. We have to be more, open and undertake more outreach. Consumers want to hear about how brands and employers are treating their employees and customers. So they want information, not necessarily sales messaging, obviously, at this time, but they want to know what you've done to protect your employees or to save your employees or to fairly treat your employees, and what you've done with your customers and how you've continued the relationship or continued the conversation with your customers. So consumers actually want to hear how you're doing that. So you've probably done a whole lot of marketing in the last 4 or 5 weeks, but you haven't probably told anybody. And so that's just something maybe to consider moving forward. 91%, so let's say almost everybody, want to see brands shifting from what they're doing yesterday to what they can do to help today. And so we see a lot of that in brand advertising and marketing right now, and I've got a few examples to share, but we know you used to be an X business. Given the pandemic, what are you doing to help either your business or your sector or your city or your town? What are you doing to kind of help work through that? And so almost everyone wants to hear those stories. So that's an important note, I think. So I've broken this into sort of 5 sections. I've given a little checklist. Again, this is all just, in the hopes to get you maybe as a thought starter that what you might take forward from the session today. So the first one is social responsibility, and it ties into that last piece of data, which says that people are looking to understand what you're doing to sort of change your business or your product offering, and they want to know the brands stand for something that, but also not to be opportunistic. I think people would understand that. They will see through anything that's not transparent. eMarketer just released, April 24th, so fairly recently, how consumers' attitude toward brand has changed during the coronavirus. And you can see here quite clearly that for those that are putting their profits before people will lose trust forever. So as I said off the top, this is a make or break time to keep and maintain and grow relationships. And a misstep could potentially lose that with your customers. How brands respond to a crisis will have a huge impact on likelihood of how they purchase that brand in the future. And I thought it was interesting, Canada, and on the last data point there is people are actually changing brands or starting to use a new brand because of the innovation or the way that they've demonstrated compassion to the virus outbreak. So that's, almost 40% of people worldwide have actually changed a habit based on what they purchase or what they're using based on how a brand has responded to the crisis. So it's really important it's actually the same study, the Edelman study, but it's really important to not go away, I guess, would be one of the key takeaways. So some of the folks that are doing lovely work in this regard at Kinsip in Prince Edward County, a local doctor actually, and owner of the farm that are, is making, is a distillery, and you've seen this through probably other distillers throughout the region, but basically, changing their product offering to sanitizer, and they didn't approach it in any kind of commercial way. They didn't necessarily promote it out of the gate in any commercial way. They quietly put out, samples of the sanitizer on the end of their driveway for healthcare workers to pick up. And, after, my understanding is after the first night, they were all gone. So it's really this community helping community and doing it for the benefit and the health of the community. On a larger scale, if you think about all of the sort of major brands that would have been in market during this time, the spring sort of wave is one of the largest, other than for Christmas and back to school, when brand marketers are really very active. So they had an established campaign that they had to change quite quickly to keep in front of customers, but to change the message. And so for CIBC, whom normally would be talking about, saving money and all those other kinds of financial institution messages, changed it to developing a Holidays for Heroes program. So through their travel points, their Advantage Travel Points program, they donated over 3 million travel points to award to healthcare workers so that when they are, when conditions allow, they will go on a trip on CIBC's dime. And they did this as a nomination process, so Canadians could nominate a healthcare worker in their community to be considered, and then they shot these, very, low lift videos of those things being presented by their family members to their nurse or doctor or personal care worker in their homes. And they had over 10,000 nominations in the first week. So there's definitely an appetite for people to help one another and to align with brands that are trying to help and give back to those that are working frontline for us now. Cheerios would have been, midstream in an Olympics campaign. So obviously a lot of brands aligned around that, notion of performance and success and training and all of that kind of thing. Cheerios changed their focus to really to be all about supporting local food banks. They created this persona, Murray the Brave, and I've included, and I will include in the deck, you'll have live links to view the creative. And really to just, change the messaging entirely to about food, helping food and food security in Canada. And they donated over $1.1 million either through direct food donation or through financial donation to food banks across the country. So that's a really big scale idea. Obviously, no one here is sitting on $1.1 million, but you can take it to your own level and to your own community and to what you can afford or what you can help and what you can do. So many of you are probably already doing these things. You're not talking about them because you're being gracious individuals. So I would just consider, thoughtful and appropriate ways of communicating the things that you're doing within your communities. And I know there's a lot of different stories we hear about restaurants and a lot of communities preparing meals for healthcare workers and creating, masks and doing a whole lot of other things that they typically wouldn't be doing at this time. So I guess just, for you to look internally, can you create or share your product in a way that you haven't done that before? Can you support a local food bank or a care home? Maybe you've already done that. And can you produce something new for customers? Is now the time to produce something new for customers? So we know consumers, and you yourselves are consumers, so you know this as well. You feel closer to and more aligned with brands that care. The second thing is building community through content. So, we talk a lot about content marketing and how that fuels most marketing programs now, that being content on websites and through social media and other channels. And here, it's really important to look at, we have an opportunity now to build content that helps strengthen our community. Leaders have to, lean on the operators that are in your own community, other business stakeholders, and that the emotional appeal of what you're doing can be shared and driven through content. So I think a really good example of this is the Together at Home program that Kingston's been operating, which follows, their existing brand platform and key attributes of music makers and food, and really engaging and enlivening the community to basically go online with their product and to provide entertainment and connection and community. And I think one of the lasting outcomes of the pandemic will be this notion of connection within each other's community. It will galvanize those relationships and potentially bring forward new ones. At the City Nation conference this week, one of our key takeaways was how most DMOs are now working in a much different capacity from a community building perspective than they have before, that they've kind of acted as a bit of a triage for operators, where some of the main street retailers or boutiques or smaller restaurants who never have really engaged in the tourism kind of space before have come forward to say, how can we help? What can we do? How can we work together? And so I think Kingston's doing a terrific job with that. And in a sort of a different sort of shift is Mini. So they're a car manufacturer, but what they understand about their buyers is they are part of a community. And so, it wouldn't be unlike a Harley Davidson community, or I don't know, maybe there's a specific fishing rod community that community is tied through a purchase, and that purchase brings you into this sort of fold. We have a little bowler trailer. I don't know if you guys know those little egg trailers built in the 70s in Winnipeg. And there's this whole community about, being a bowler owner. And anyway, all to say, what Mini has done or has planned for the month of May is they're doing these virtual meetups. And so it's really not about buying a car. It's not even about servicing a car. It's about strengthening that community. And they know through research that their buyers are into food, and they're into, obviously they're car enthusiasts, so they're into the history of the car, and they're into care and maintenance of their vehicles, but they're also into cocktails and entertainment and that kind of thing. So I've shared with you the link there. It just shows how content can create that community and bring that community together. So there are probably things that you have in your own arsenal of content that you could potentially use to help grow your own community. And many of you are probably already doing that. So from a content perspective, what ties your customers together? So think beyond just the obvious things. Well, so if I'm maybe an inn in the Thousand Islands, I know that a lot of my customers love to fish, or they love to cook, or they love, shore lunch or whatever the case may be. And maybe there's other ways of creating content that isn't commercial necessarily, because you're not open to accept visitors right now, but that helps to try to drive that community and create bonds with you and them based over these common hobbies or common loves of or areas of passion. Identify partners to work with for creating and sharing content. I think smaller operators are intimidated by or might feel that I'm not a writer, I'm not a photographer, I don't know how to make a video. You don't necessarily have to do any of those things yourself. I think it's the ability to look for partners to help create those stories. And so consider who those people might be, and maybe they're different partners that you haven't considered working with before. And then make it interactive. I think you're seeing, and this will come up later as well, but a lot of brands are asking customers questions at this time. Via Rail just did a major survey for those of you that are Via customers. I mean, it took almost 20 minutes, but it went to a very high level of detail about when I'm going to feel comfortable traveling by train again and under what conditions I'll be comfortable traveling by train. So in part it is market research or customer survey, but it's also this point of connection, and I understand that what they're trying to do is ask me how I feel, which is important. The third item is email marketing. And one of the sort of overall data findings in the last few weeks has been that email is being opened now more than ever before. Makes sense. People are at home, they're online more, they're spending more time online. A crazy stat, I think it's over 5 hours a day, which is basically almost a full work day. Well, I wish it was a full work day, but anyway. So email marketing has really seen a resurgence in terms of its effectiveness and its relevancy. And I think that a lot of businesses aren't using email as well as we might. It does maybe seem to have been put on the back burner in a sense as it relates to customer conversations. It's not necessarily used as a primary channel, and I suggest that maybe that's something that we could move forward. That one might be a good idea or tactic. It's low cost, it's high return, and it allows you to provide customers with frequent updates. It's important that your messaging is clear and informative and relevant. I mean, people will obviously unsubscribe if they feel at any point that the emails that they're receiving are not relevant or entertaining or informative or whatever the case may be. So email was actually suggested or identified as the #1 method by which brands trust communication during this time. Obviously, traditional media is also important. None of us are obviously using a lot of traditional media right now. And our website and your website. So you see here, yes, all the social feeds are important, but as it relates to sort of trust, I think email is demonstrated to be #1. So what can we do with email? This is a resort in Costa Rica that has an ongoing email narrative about what they're doing through the crisis and how they've stayed in touch with guests and continued the conversation. This image is of their last guests that were in the bar. We can all look at that longingly, I think, that before they had to go into hibernation. I've shared with you the actual message from the general manager of the hotel to really a personal message about how they were intending to retain staff, how they were going to, they call it hibernation, which I thought was kind of lovely. It sounds a little bit nicer than shut down or, locked down or whatever. It seems a bit softer. And just how they were planning to and continue to plan to reopen over time. it brings you back to the experience of being in the place and the people of the place. So there's probably things that you're doing now in prep for, the next phases of opening that may have an interesting story to them, or that you've sourced local suppliers to help you make that happen. There's probably some content there that would be worthy of sharing through email. The reality, unfortunately, I think, is that many operators don't have their email marketing list, actual mailing list, where it needs to be. Now's a good time to change that. Excuse me. So reviewing your list is, I guess, kind of, top line. If you could take a look at, the bounce backs, or if there's a certain open rate within a certain segmentation of your list, or frankly, if you even have a list, now's the time to potentially start one. And or if you haven't talked to anybody for a long time, you can send out an email to ask them to resubscribe. It's a really good opportunity to touch base back with previous customers. And so simply staying in touch. You don't have to necessarily build a full calendar. I'm going to email you every week or every month or every 6 weeks. It could just be that you have a note of update of where you're at in the process of reopening, or rejigging what you're doing, or providing masks, or whatever the case may be. Just simply staying in touch. Knowing that your number one customer opportunity beyond your immediate sort of concentric circle of geography will be people that have been customers before. That's a really good place to start to reboot business, is to talk to those people again, because they've already been with you. They understand, your offering or your experience. So that's a really good place to start. It may also be time to revisit the software we're using, be it Campaigner or MailChimp or HubSpot, or there's, lots of them, and tying that into a customer relationship management system. That simply could be an Excel sheet that you just track customers and customer connection. But it might be worthwhile looking at, if you are going to regenerate your email strategy, maybe there's a new tool that you don't know about or that you're not using that you could potentially bring on to, frankly, make that system work faster. And getting feedback, I think this is kind of like the VIA example I used. It is an opportunity. It's not necessarily a one-way conversation. You could use email marketing to help answer questions, and obviously RTO9 is doing a lot of that with their industry input and getting direct feedback from your mailing list, and making it interactive. So, it could be a quiz or a game, or it could be just sharing something that you felt was relevant for your audience, something that can allow them to interact with it in some way other than just opening it. So maybe they sign up for, I don't know why I have fishing on my brain today, but let's say, sign up for the bass fishing guide for Land O'Lakes, or whatever the case may be. So creating, a way to stay in touch. The fourth item is social channels. And this is probably, excuse me, I'm just going to mute as I clear my throat. 1 second. Sorry about that. I think I had mentioned earlier, so social is now more prevalent than ever before. Customers are spending lots of time there. It now accounts for 53% of total media time spent. And we need to continue to stay active in social channels. The actual percentage of organic reach that you receive through your social channels is quite small. You do need to put money behind paid social in order for it to reach the audience that you're potentially looking to reach. But if you do have followers and you do have a sort of core customer group, it's important to continue to use your social channels to reach out to them. And maybe now is a good time to refresh and rethink what you're doing in social. There are a lot of different opportunities that you could potentially consider. When is the last time you did your TripAdvisor update, your listing update? It could be this week, which is awesome. It could be last month, less awesome. It could be last year, really not awesome. We all know the importance of this as a channel, and I consider it to be a social channel because that's where people really do share their experiences from a travel perspective more than anywhere else. So TripAdvisor has a variety of tools, as you know, for operators. The very basic things that you could look at and keep active in real time are your amenities. Those things may change post-COVID. It's important that those are reflected in your TripAdvisor listing. Refreshing your description, adding new photos. You probably have additional imagery that you've generated or that visitors or customers have generated, or maybe you ask as part of your email outreach, I'm looking for new photos of my thing, do you have any? Responding to reviews, now is a good time. This is probably the #1 thing that consumers are looking for in a TripAdvisor listing is what are people saying about the place. But they also look to see how the operator or owner of that business has responded. So even if it is from last summer or 2 summers ago, it is worth going back and responding to those reviews. And you've seen them, you know, the tone, it's, you know, thank you if it's something that has been potentially negative. Then you say, we've actually worked on that, or we're planning on working on that, or thank you for your, you know, thank you for the suggestion. Some of these things are dated when you're operating day to day and busy in the day to day. Some of these items kind of fall off. So now's a good time, and understanding there is going to be a resurgence of people looking for things to do. Get your TripAdvisor update ready. And update user access. You may have old employees that are included in there, or you want to add new employees, or you want to add different resources into that. So updating who can update your TripAdvisor is important. I'm not suggesting that you start a TikTok account, but I suggest you think about TikTok. They had a 33% increase in users since the pandemic started, which is really incredible. Amongst people under 24, and then 27% for millennials. So those are people at 24 to late 30s now. I don't think it's going anywhere. They're actually introducing a variety of e-commerce elements into the platform. And one of the things about TikTok is that you don't have to be on TikTok to consume TikTok. So the videos can be easily shared to your website or to other apps such as Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And it's a bit of fun. So if you have anybody young in your sphere, I think you should try a TikTok dance. That's my reco. Is it relevant for your business today? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know what your demographic is, but I think it's worth now at least having a look at how you might use that for a younger set. Pinterest is also something that you may not have considered or potentially used as part of what you're doing. They also have introduced a more robust e-commerce element to their platform. So again, if it's you know, elements of things that you're offering as an experience or for purchase as products, Pinterest might be a good opportunity for you from a direct sales perspective. And people are spending more and more time on it during this COVID time. If you're not using stories, it is probably worth considering that. I mean, I think a lot of people active on Instagram are using stories, and they've been identified as kind of the leading type of content that people are now consuming in Instagram and on Facebook. You can see here this study from eMarketer. So watching other people's stories is really the #1 thing that people are doing now. The advantage of stories is it's a vertical video, it takes off full screen, and it allows interactivity. You can add quizzes, you can add questions, and a lot of you are probably already using stories, but for those that haven't, it's probably worth a review. So on the social side, it's like, what channels could I potentially, even if you're just researching them, and what other formats could I potentially use to add? So revisiting your audience numbers, where are they most engaged? Again, to the TripAdvisor comment, if you have comments that have been left in your social feed that you haven't responded to, now's a good time. It doesn't matter if it was 6 months ago. It shows that connectivity. It shows that your lights are on and that you want to reach back to customers. Trying TikTok at least for one dance. You may want to look at incorporating a different social metrics software for those that have multiple channels and are trying to manage multiple feeds. We recommend Sprout Social, but there's a lot of them that would help you, really consolidate all of that into one platform and into one dashboard so that you can make your updates quickly. You can determine or decide what goes where, all in kind of one fell swoop. And TripAdvisor is, as I mentioned, now's a good time to check in on that. The last idea is to take a look at your website. It's your #1 digital marketing tool, always will be. So now is a good time to update web content functionality. You probably have a list of things that you've wanted to change or update. Now is a good time to get ready. What are people searching for? How are people finding you? Hopefully you have analytics set up on your website that you can look and maybe take some time to see what is the top content, where are people going most often, where are they spending the most time on my website, and does my site rank? When I Google some of the key items, maybe it's fishing Thousand Islands, do I even appear? So looking through some of that data, if you have it, to identify what kind of enhancements you might take forward. Google has a really wide range of free tools that I would highly recommend you accessing if you don't already. They have a skill shop which provides very intuitive and easy to follow tutorials about things like Google My Business, which is really important to keep, the Google My Business component of your the web search result is critical to be up to date. So even if today you're open from 12:10 to 12:15, then it should say today I'm open from 12:10 to 12:15. You should really be using the Google My Business tool as the open closed door on your doorway. And Google will serve the most current, obviously, information that you input into that, and you need to own your business on Google, and that will become increasingly important over time. Google has a section for small business. It's called Primer, and again, I've got the links included on this deck, which we'll share after the call. And this is a variety of different interactive kind of tools and checklists that you can use for different business opportunities, budgeting, tracking, planning, that kind of thing. And then they have a special section about COVID-19. Not everybody is comfortable asking customers for support to, buy gift cards as an example during a time when retailers are closed or operators are closed, but they do provide those tools under their specific COVID-19 resource section. So I would recommend having a look there, and there's probably something that would be of value to your business. So for the website checklist, review your search performance and analytics tracking, and if you don't have goal tracking set up on your website, that's something that you should also consider now so that you know specifically if you're achieving your goals. I talked about Google My Business and other updates. If we are going to move into a more newsletter marketing, what does that newsletter sign up feel like and look like on your website, and could you update and enhance that? Updating partner links is also really important from a search result perspective. So if you don't already, look at other partners that you can include on your website and ask them to include a link to your website. So either through your DMO or the RTO or other like associations, sector associations, using the TripAdvisor widget on your website, that kind of thing. And then refreshing content. So if we have new images for TripAdvisor or we have new testimonials that we potentially might use, those things could also update your website. So just a few ideas on that front. And the last thing I just wanted to share with everybody is we are working with Tourism HR Canada. It looks really fuzzy, sorry. In the development of a free online tool. It's a tourism recovery toolkit. It's split into 5 modules and it will be available at the end of June. The sign up is there, it's free, and I'm sure Lori and team will reshare this closer to the actual launch date of the tool. We were working with Tourism HR Canada in the development of Business Builders, which is a online tourism small and medium tourism operator training program to help businesses start, grow, and become more international ready. We were about halfway through that project when COVID hit, and we quickly decided collectively that there needs to be something related to crisis. Unfortunately, everyone believes that this might not be the last crisis. We have had a few in the past, nothing like this, obviously, but how do we, create more resiliency in our tourism business for the future? And that's really what this toolkit is meant to do. And I also wanted to mention that Tourism HR Canada has extended free training courses under their eMerit brand. So at emerit.ca, all of their training programs are now available at no charge. So if you have staff members that you want to have take training, if they're not working for you right now, or maybe they're working half-time, they could be taking training. You could be taking additional training if you would be interested. There's I think there's 30 different programs across the hospitality and tourism spectrum. So I would recommend maybe now is a good time to take some additional education and training, and just, again, I think in the description today was to be proactive and productive and to stay positive and to take positive steps forward. So that's all I got.
Excellent. That is, I hope everyone can hear me. That was a plethora of information, to say the least, and I think everything you've touched on, Cathy, from the social responsibility aspect to profits before people, that's, I don't think that that some operators appreciate how important that is in difficult times like this. And as you mentioned, yeah, we really haven't gone through anything like this in our lifetime to this extent, where globally we're pretty much all shut down, even though at this point we are looking at reopening. I think we all know that that's going to be a gradual process, and it's not going to be a flip of the switch where all of a sudden we're back to normal. When we come out of this, and as we gradually come out of this, and I think gradual is the operative word here, because it's not going to be the light switch that we would all like it to be. It's going to be very gradual, as we're seeing now, and we haven't seen the hospitality industry really open as of yet, and certainly a lot of our tourism partners still are remaining closed. But using this time wisely, and I know that can be quite a challenge for everyone when you are dealing with financial issues, when you're dealing with HR issues, when you're just trying to stay afloat. Yeah. But you know, as you have reiterated throughout your presentation today, the importance is in how you spend your time, and what you're doing to stay relevant, to stay with your lights on, so people really understand that you still are in business, even though you may not be able to sell or offer tours or really conduct business the way you normally do. So the importance, of course, is in staying connected. And whether that's through email, which I didn't realize actually, Cathy, that the email was the preference by that high of a percentage, but good to know. And then building your community through content. I think we've certainly seen that through partners. We try, of course, we do that with our brand, with our social media girl does a terrific job of sharing content from our partners, as well as keeping everyone abreast of what's going on within the industry. So I think there is, and there's someone trying to call me. I think there is a real need for people to take a step back in times like this and really just self-assess from a business standpoint. What am I doing to stay connected, as well as, and this really struck home for me, the importance of the Google My Business tool. And I'm sure we've all experienced a time where we've Googled a business to find out if they're open or what their address is, either to arrive at their front door and find out they're either not there, they moved 6 months ago or longer, or they're not open today. And that, I think, immediately with people sends a sense of, you know, I don't really trust the business to be there when I need them. So that aspect of your business, of making sure that people know what you're doing in times like this on a day-to-day basis, and making sure that the information that is available out there for existing or potential customers is timely, it is current, and it's being watched on a regular basis. So some really great points. We are at 11:15, so we still have about 15 minutes. I am going to unmute everyone, but if you would prefer to type in a question, please feel free to do so in the chat bubble, and I can read that on your behalf. And we'll see if we can get everyone unmuted. Or if you've muted yourself. Okay, does anyone have questions? None. Okay.
Well, I have a question. Yes,
Exactly.
It's David Goodman. I'm on my wife's name there. Cathy, what is Alphabet Creative? What services do you offer to small business?
We're tourism marketing consultancy. We're based in Ottawa, and really a whole range of services. Probably our biggest strength is brand development and strategic brand platform. But we also work with clients across a variety of different marketing initiatives, marketing planning, social media, content development, how all those things kind of integrate into a brand strategy.
Well, that's normal for somebody in marketing. What I'm wondering is, what is the size of your average client? Are they medium to large? Do you do mom and pop? What's your scale?
Yeah, I mean, we have clients across a variety of industries and a variety of scales. We typically work sort of at the destination level, so at the DMO level, or at the regional level. But, you know, we'd be certainly happy to, you know, speak to you and see if there's a way that we could help you. And we also know there's a lot of other great firms in the RTO region as well that, you know, might be able to help as well.
Thank you.
Terrific. And Cathy, I have a question here. Around the world, we're now seeing negative feelings about travel, about their own travel, and also about the idea of other people traveling to small towns and cities. Do you think there will be a role for tourism marketers to start changing mindsets on this?
I don't think marketing is going to solve that. I think that it just needs time. I think, and that is really out of everyone's control. One of the data points that was shared by Destination Canada this week is that 10% of Canadians feel like welcoming somebody to Canada. So 90% of Canadians aren't ready to see anybody from anywhere. I just think it's time. I don't think you could market your way out of that. I think that each community needs to find its own, balance and what they're comfortable with and what the residents are comfortable with. And that just bubbles into, community, province, country. And it is absolutely the same everywhere. I know that our colleagues at 2031 do suggest that there is what they're calling the intrepid traveler, like the person that's, would have already been an intrepid traveler, is probably will be the first out of the gate. They will be the ones that, kind of fly in the not that it's unsafe, but they'll definitely take a higher level of risk than most of us will. So there will be activity at some point, but I don't think you can market your way out of it. In that part of it, I mean, there's things that you can do to be ready. There's things that you can do to be brand ready, to have a campaign ready, all of those things, but I don't think you can change the sentiment of people at this time.
No, and I would agree. I think, certainly the landscape, the geography of the tourism industry for the foreseeable future, it's going to start small. It's going to start locally in our own towns. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback. And then it will move on to interprovincial, and then of course, when the borders open, we'll move on from there. So it's still a work in progress, I think, for quite some time.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we heard this week quite clearly across both Canada and the US is the importance of regional travel, which is really relevant, obviously, for everyone on the call today. And it's where, cities might pair together to actually, package together or create product together. And, the importance of working maybe with whom you might have considered to be a competitor yesterday might actually be an ally today. And there was one example of a city in the US that they're in the process of building out packages with their neighboring city for when, timing is right, for when they can get people in from other states, but that they're basically, combining resources and activity to get people to their region first.
Right, and that's an excellent point, because I think, up until fairly recently, it has been in many cases a one-man show, where particularly for smaller tour operators or tourism businesses, they look at marketing as a sole effort. And I think if nothing else, what we're going through with COVID-19 has really shone a light on the need for partnerships, the need for coming together as a community to market your community, your city, and again, eventually it will be the region, the province. So I think as we look at reopening this area, the province, we need to look at advertising and marketing the entire region as opposed to just a few businesses. I think it just makes sense to bring people to the area for a few days at a time as opposed to just for a day. And in order to do that, I think it involves more than one or two partners. I think it involves a concerted effort to put together packages that will entice people to come and to stay over and to feel safe, which will be a big issue moving forward. How do we ensure that people feel safe coming into your business, to the area, to restaurants, to hotels? So, and that gets back to the messaging. how not only you're treating your employees, but suppliers, how you're messaging this to your suppliers, how you're messaging your whole social responsibility to anyone who really needs to know. And I think that's vital in moving forward. Terrific. Any other questions?
So I do have one. When it came to, you mentioned earlier with the emails, do you have any suggestions on services to send them out? I know currently we've been using MailChimp, but it hasn't necessarily been getting to everyone.
We actually use MailChimp. That would be our software of choice internally, but we've worked with pretty much all of them. They're all, to be honest, pretty similar and offer a fairly similar feature list. So yeah, I think MailChimp is a good one for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Cathy, thank you again. I know we caught you on short notice to come and do this presentation. Can't thank you enough. I think you spoke about some terrific points today just to help people push forward and make the best use of their time while we go through the reopening process. And none of us are sure how long that will be. If there's a second wave that could come, what will that look like? But in the meantime, there are things that businesses can and should be doing. And you certainly have spoken about many of them today. Okay, that's just a thank you for an informative presentation. Thank you everyone for attending. We do have another webinar tomorrow. It is on our website and our social media pages if you're interested in attending. And it is through Eventbrite.
What website is that, Lori? Sorry, Lori, what website is that?
Our tourismtalk.ca.
Okay, that's good. And just while I can get it in, the presentation today, there was a voice that came on saying this was being recorded or available for after the fact. Is that the case?
It is, and it will be on our website as well on tourismtalk.ca.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, okay. Go ahead.
You're welcome. Okay, no other questions. So Cathy, again, thank you so much for your time, for the presentation, for the invaluable information really for business owners on how they can push forward with this. Hopefully we'll all be out of this sooner versus later, but it remains to be seen. And I wish everyone a lovely sunny day, and I believe it's supposed to be nice for the rest of the weekend. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
That's all, folks.